What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Big Country. Once again, big shout out to Mr. Solo for providing the initial material for this deep dive, as well as to Wayne for providing much more Big Country, as well as a number of other things. And please bear with me, I'm still in the process of downloading that to my internet computer, moving some of it over to my music computer so we can have deep dives and further installments or chapters in the Big Country deep dive ready to go. But yes, we are going to listen to another tune from the bonus material for the era of the 1988 album Peace in Our Time. I am skipping over a couple acoustic versions of album tracks, including an acoustic version of the title track for Peace in Our Time, because the tune When a Drum Beats, I think, is a tune I've never reacted to before by them. So in that regard, I figured it would make sense to react to an original tune or a new tune that I don't already know, and as I said, I will after this go back and react to those two acoustic tracks that are apparently different versions of tracks on the proper album. I will say also there's a couple demos in the folder, and I'll just have to see what Wayne or any others of you say. I'm very interested in demos in part because they represent the process that a band goes through, where they have an idea for a song, they get it recorded, but in some cases they keep working on it, they change parts of it, and maybe the final album version of a track is very different from the initial demo. In some cases it might not be very different, but it's enhanced, or at least it has a fuller production value, so I'd be keen to know whether those demos will be worth reacting to. We'll talk about it more next time when, again, I think I'll be reacting to the acoustic version of Peace in Our Time. But for the time being, we're going to listen to When a Drum Beats. It sounds like it's very focused on context, which is to say there are different times and places where drums beat for a very specific purpose. That is to say, drums often feature in funerals, drums can feature in military endeavors, which that understanding in particular seems like it might be relevant just because a lot of their songs, not just on the album Peace in Our Time, though maybe especially so, speak to military conflicts and the human toll and cost of such conflicts, and the way in which the effects can be felt by those who are party to the conflict itself, those who are civilians in that context, and they do seem to talk about war and its consequences on a number of their tunes, again, going back to earlier in their career, but certainly on the album that we just finished going to. Now, of course, it could be drums beating in a different context, and obviously drums beat in musical contexts that are divorced, or at least not the same as real-world political, geopolitical, and other affairs. But yes, immediately it makes me think that this might be in reference to a specific time, place, and situation in which a drum may beat. So let's see what I can pick up on a first listen. This is Big Country, When a Drum Beats, a bonus track included in a folder of non-album tunes from the era of their Peace in Our Time album. Tune. It almost sounded like that was like a demo. You could hear, like, I don't know, if someone putting down an instrument at the end there. But yeah, so it feels very much in the vein of a number of their songs. Again, going back to before Peace in Our Time, but certainly in the vein of a lot of that album proper, which is to say, it sounds like he's saying when governments and nation states start beating that drum of war, to him it's hard to swallow, and it sounds increasingly hollow, like it's, you know, manufactured to ensure that they have cannon fodder to go achieve aims that will not benefit the vast majority of the people in that country, and which might be in relation to, you know, trying to acquire and exploit resources in other places to drum up nationalism and a sense of, you know, the satiation of the egos of leaders and so on. And he's saying, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to go. I'm not ready to go fight and die for causes that are ultimately, you know, brutal and violent and will lead to many people dying. And, you know, I'm not ready to lay down my life for these people who will benefit while the rest of us just serve as, again, a means to an end. And it sounds like it's being said broadly, where, you know, it's not just one nation state, it's the governments and militaries of lots of different countries that are engaged in this type of drum beating and modern day imperialism and so on. So yeah, it feels very much in the vein of a lot of other material they've written. There were other lines about, I think, like mothers and so on, where I'm not sure if it was talking about, their children being part of this war machine, or, being caught up in the drum beat that is persuasive to some, but which others can see through. It might be about the impact of these conflicts in various places, including at home, when their, sons and daughters are dying, or when the world that they knew is no longer the case because of these brutal and violent forces. But yeah, it seems like it's very much in the vein of the album proper, during which time this track was apparently recorded. I do love the guitar work on the track, not just that catchy riff, though that is maybe my favorite part of it sonically, but even just at the beginning you could already hear a sense that there's some real energetic and a bit, not harder, I mean it wasn't like aggressive or anything, but it did have an edge to it, the guitar work in this track. And yes, I love the drums, which, there's a bit of an amusing synchronicity to a track about drum beats conceptually featuring a lot of dynamic drum work. And there was that ride cymbal or crash cymbal, which was really providing the rhythm of the tune. So yeah, a really cool track, one that again I think could have fit onto the album very easily, though as I said, it seemed like, especially at the end, this was maybe an early recording, and eventually the decision was made not to include it on the album, so maybe it didn't get the post-production work or a proper re-recording that it might have given if it was a tune that made it onto the actual album. And who knows, maybe it was a B-side that was released. But yeah, that just caught my ear at the end there. But a cool tune, very much enjoyed it. As I said, we'll jump back and go through the two acoustic versions, which, let me just make sure, I know one of them is a Peace in Our Time. What is the other one? Oh yeah, Broken Heart, 13 Valleys, acoustic. And then there's demos for Ages of Man and Cuts Like a Spoon. So I'll be curious if people think we should go through those. We do have, a whole other folder of demos, which, again, I'm willing to go through any of those that are considered worthwhile. There's 15 in there, including some tracks I don't see, like Christmas Island. I don't remember reacting to a tune called Christmas Island, Not Waving, but Drowning. Yeah, so there's some in here where I'm not sure. So the disc is called Disc 2, the REL Demos. Now there are some in here, like 1,000 Yard Stare, that are definitely on the Peace in Our Time album. So, as I said, we'll go through whatever we decide is worth listening to in reaction form. And as I said, the very next reaction will be the acoustic version of Peace in Our Time. So I'm looking forward to that. As I said, shout out to Mr. Solo for this deep dive initially. Shout out to Wayne for providing additional material. Shout out to all those who've been here since the early days, or others who may have joined more recently. And indeed, I don't know if this person will see this, but someone recently found some of my earlier Big Country reactions, and they were like, oh, it's not pipes, like they're using an E-bow on a guitar. And obviously that was something I learned very early on. I confess initial ignorance as I entered this deep dive, but for those who are catching up, there's already a lot of Big Country in the folder. Bear with me if you go back to those older videos. I was still learning about the band, and of course am still learning about the band. But yes, there's a lot in the playlist already. There's a lot more coming. Let me know what you think of this. I will see you next time. Peace.